want you to have the opportunity to think about it. Okay, so one of the things that we do value stream maps, that's where you want to go eventually. But initially, the goal is to understand the current process, right? What you're doing is fine because you're kind of managing to talk about everything in one discussion. But when you first start this process, the goal is to understand what goes on and understand the current performance levels. Right? That's the primary objective. You're actually going out and observing, oh, a Lyft driver takes about 3.5 weeks to come on board, as an example. Okay, so the cycle time for this is overall 3.5 weeks. What are the elements that cause that 3.5 weeks to happen? From the time a driver was showing interest to us. Why did it take 3.5 weeks? Why didn't it happen in 2 hours? So what we're doing is actually first walking the process to see what happens as you go through the entire process until the email goes out to the driver. You're now an approved driver. Right? That's something happened between the time that the driver was interested and the time that they received authorization to start driving. Right? That could have been a Lyft sign, it could be a bunch of things that we send to them, but they eventually got something from us. They time to go and start driving. Between those processes, there may be that intake process that you're highlighting. There could be an inspection process. There could be a third-party background check, anything along the way. Some of those activities could be inside the company. Some of those companies could be services that you acquired from third-party organizations. So the first thing that you're doing is first walking and figuring out what the performance is like, right? Because process design is a bit different in this. This is really about understanding the performance characteristics that we have now and what can we do to improve whatever is we're getting that. So can I take this 3.5 week process and make it 3 days? What's the stopping date? Can I take this 11-day application process and make it 5 days? What's stopping it? Right? So it could be a combination of adding resources, changing process, change training, change vendors, all of that stuff could happen.
Build a system to automatically do things.
Exactly. It could be all of those things. And some of your ideas are systems related, which become a state project of some sort eventually. But first, we want to understand the current state and get agreement from everybody. Do you all agree this is the current performance? Do we all agree that this should be better? Remember that whole customer report card? Uber is doing it in 2.5 weeks, or 2 weeks, or 5 days. We're 1.5 or 3.5 weeks. There's a problem here. You got to be at least as good as, right? Because if I lose a driver to my competitor, they may be less motivated, less interested to work with me because their first interaction with me was 2.5 times worse. So I don't want that, right? So I start with a customer report card. What is important to the driver when they reach out and say, I'm interested? Whether they're doing it part-time, or as a retiree, or full-time, whoever they are, what is important to them? Is it the percentage of money that they can take home? Is it the responsiveness they have? Is it the features and capabilities of the system? What are those things? Is it the mapping software to be used? If you understand those things, some elements of those things will be related to that onboarding process that you want to focus on. So customer report card tells us that there's 4 things drivers care the most about that onboarding process. And by the way, we're twice as good or half as bad, whatever, or this much worse than the guy who's doing it in China. That then drives our discussion. How can I compete? Why are they doing it in 1 day? And why is mine 18 days? Because it's not a random thing. Just I want to say, what is it that makes me actually be able to compete well, and what helps me excel and maybe dominate? Because every one of these things are not free. It takes investment of time and energy and resources. So having reasonable targets, having reasonable comparisons, all of those things are important to the discussion that you're having. So a snapshot of the current state, then you can actually get into the future state. And that could include building new systems and eliminating silos. And all of those things are fair discussions to have. I'm sorry, David, just wanted to make sure. Yeah, very good. Any other thoughts as far as, so I wanted to make sure that first of all, you kind of think about what these boxes are, whether you need 3 of them or 8 of them, whatever the number is. There we go. No. Maybe. Usually that lamp is about to go. That's when it starts doing that.
Yeah.
So how many boxes? Do we know how long it's sitting in the queue? Those kind of discussions, right? This is basically this is inventory now. If I have 10 things that's been processed and not ready to be processed by the next step, Why is it? Why can't it just be flowing right through? Why is it sitting for 10 days or 5 days? Sometimes there's significant delays between two sub-processes. Sometimes functions, sometimes management, politics, all kinds of things come into play. So that's basically what we're doing, is getting a good picture of what's driving the current performance levels. And then we decide based on the customer report card where the focus area should. What's the target?
But you're also assuming that it makes the most sense for the organization or company to actually do it directly, right? Maybe it makes sense to have a queue of 300 pile up and then do them as a batch, just do one at a time.
Well, actually, now you're getting into Lean says no. Lean says optimal flow is what you want. Inventory usually is not a good idea. Usually, now that means small batches. Usually, again, now you're getting into fundamentals of why not a queue of 5 before you process. But Lean principles say optimal flow is what you're looking for, and you want it to be pull rather than push after them.
So the reason is when you have so many of these waiting in the first stage of your thing, you could not harvest the benefits from those people.
It's a waste of resources.
Your workforce earlier. Now that's working inventory, WIP. That's a wasted resource for you. If they were already there, working for you, you would have been benefiting from their whatever they were going to do. That's why.
But the cost of doing it one by one may be larger than you think.
Actually, now you're getting into why optimal flow is actually the best scenario. So there's a whole discussion that you can have about that. But I can tell you that the answer is optimal flow.
We have in Agile some exercises to talk about what should be your optimal batch size to drive these things through. We won't go through that today, but in other forums.
There's actually science behind all of this that we're talking about. So we can talk about it. We can have exercises around why this is the way to do it. Great. Thank you very much. Let me ask the other team, please. So value stream mapping is most beneficial. I'll go there in 1 second. Is when you have an existing process that has certain performance characteristics. There's actually a better approach to designing a new process. It's under Six Sigma called DMAP. It's basically a process that Six Sigma defines as a way to define the metrics and the performance, the voice of the customer, and what that. So what you're doing is perfect, but it's really about process design, which is something you should do before deploying something new, which is exactly what you would do, and you can assume things and test things and all that. Most of the time, in an existing organization, things are going on in some way. It's not a new process, but an existing process. And the question is it adequate? Could it be better? How much waste should we remove? Why should we remove it? Why should we work on this? Right? So in a larger organization, many times these are already in place. So this process usually is about mapping, not designing, mapping what is already going on so that you can ask the why. Why is it taking 3.5 weeks? And then you do the detailed why. Why are we getting this kind of performance? Why is it when I send a request to such and such company, it takes them 2 days? Maybe I can go to another company and get one. All of those things that you were raising could be opportunities to improve. But what are you doing? You're improving performance of an existing process. So when I talk about data here, it's really about the metrics that shows you how it's performing. How much time you work on something, and how much time it took to take it through the entire process. The tools and templates you use are also part of it, but we don't call those data boxes, right? This specifically, if you're setting up a machine to do something, that's called setup time, as an example. If you're working for 2 minutes to sign something, that's called the processing time of doing that signature, so on and so forth. So I just want you to get in your mind the utility of a value stream map. It's not a design tool. It is intended for you to understand performance characteristics of something that's going on now.
But this is really capturing the as-is process.
You got it.
Versus when you were talking, we were looking at introducing something versus documenting the as-is process. So if you were saying as-is process, that would be different.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we would say, this is what we're here by us doing
I should have emphasized that, exactly. But that's very important. Most people don't make those distinctions. So it's a great discussion. That's an aha moment, right? Oh, this is intended to help design a new process. It is really intended to understand how value is created from a customer's point of view, and why is it performing the way it is now. So the assumption is there's something that you're trying to improve. If you're building a whole new process, like you want to shoot describing, I want to have an elite force. I have 10,000 drivers, but I want to have 1,000 of them being the elite. And I want to have a better process, and it's faster, and it has all these automatic checks in it, and all these things. Well, you're now designing. And if I'm designing, I want it to be better designed than Uber. How do I do that? What things do I measure? How do I talk to the driver so I have the voice of the customer integrated into it? How do I put in the right processes in place so the control charts tell me what percentage of time am I getting Six Sigma performance from this particular process? All of those things come into discussion. Now you're getting into a very broad set of discussions around roles of lean versus Six Sigma and process design, process improvement, Kaizen, all of that stuff, which are good discussions that, again, we won't have time to get into today. But excellent points. So that's, was that helpful for having that discussion? Just thinking about it? Yes, go ahead.
How many times do I walk through the existing process?
Just one time.
One time?
Yeah, you're just basically understanding what goes on in the organization, right? And usually it's between 3 to 8 boxes, a high level. You understand the current, because again, remember, you have a specific thing you're trying to address. In my market, I got to do really well in this particular capability, this particular process. Let's map it out. And then you may have 4 executives involved that got to get on board for your assessment of what goes on today. And the fact that the VP of logistics is the problem. He's not letting this happen, or he's enforcing a poor process or poor results. Right? These interactions, usually the organizational silos, cultural barriers, those become huge issues. That's why the executives a lot of times have to agree to your analysis. Now, once you've done it as is, then you can have a discussion around what can I do to improve it. And the improvement may need a 5-day, analysis of the detailed process metrics around 5 core sub-processes, which is still a legitimate activity to do once you understand the big picture. It's not in marketing, it's in logistics that's the problem. And I got to do 3 departments at this level of the Kaizen process to be able to achieve. Other last question?
Yeah.
Actually,
So see that as you go through the this process, you probably be talking to your screen and so forth.
Awesome.
And that's also a way where we also capture the customer journey mapping.
Yep.
Because as they go through
Very
the
similar.
process, they will identify the pain spots,
Yep.
right? And
Just playing the game.
Right, and then they'll be capturing my process box, what I do, how I do it, and
Yep.
and people ask questions or questions. What's your idle time? Some of the boxes. Yeah, but during that time, you do something better. So you can try to get more of their empathy of the process journey. So some of these things are really like
Just actually almost complementary, right?
complementary together because customer is really, it's really how you interpret customer at the level. Right?
yes.
Exactly.
And then also a lot of these process boxes that you do by yourself is better to do with me, so you can capture the assets and also get ideas of the pain spot so you can start doing gap analysis
Yes.
and design.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. Great observation.
You had a question?
Yeah, actually, no.
Hamid.
I didn't have a question. I thought
Yeah.
the way I came up with what I said is because most of the engineers and most of technical people, whatever we throw at them and say this is the process, we automatically go through the design.
Yes. Try to create the new process.
Without looking at the customer journey, without looking at what is current process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's look at what is current process. And that's why I jumped into my plan, my dream. Saying, okay, now we want to do a perfect vision.
How do I create a perfect process?
This is my perfect vision. So I even dismissed the entire process that right now we have.
Yeah.
And missing that or dismissing actually the plan as is and jumping to design plan.
Exactly. So this is so critical, right?
This is so critical in many areas.
Yeah. Very important point. I'm glad that this discussion happened because it shows you, because if somebody says, why are you spending money on this? How are you going to show? Why? The only way is to say, let me show you. We walked the process, we talked to the subject matter experts, we had the executives together, and we agreed it was taking 3.5 weeks, and it sucks. It's costing us 10% market share. Oh, okay. Then we spend money, we build systems, we change process, we put training in place, We spent $2 million, but guess what? We increased market share by 3%. That's good. That idea is not commonplace in most organizations. We just jump in and change things.
Yes, and that's the problem.
This approach actually comes back to what you said earlier, that I always said it's not there. It's not going to change unless it can change. leverage existing, we can actually do transformation to success of our work.
Yeah.
And get those back in with stories.
Yeah, the design, what you talked about, the design is great, right on target.
Yeah, so that's the approach
Yeah.
that you mentioned, seeing out the businesses.
So if there's one thing you remember out of this is that we got to know the as is. This is the only way to show why you're spending time on this. If somebody says, why are you doing this? This is going to give you the data that says, average employee cost for us is $28 an hour. We're spending X number of hours, and it's costing us on average $550 to process an application. The competitors are doing it for $420, right? And we do 10,000 of these. It's costing us $5.5 million a year. We want to reduce it down to $2.5 million. Oh, okay. Well, there's a business case. Show me when you get there. Okay, great. Not too many organizations do that. That's the key that I want you to take away from this discussion. Having a good view of what goes on today, and how does that relate to what the customer expects and what the competition is doing. Remember the idea of CEO metrics that we talked about early on in the process? Very important to say, these are 3 or 4 things that matter in our business. Then you can say, I'm going to work on this because this supports number 4. This is going to help us manage the warehouse better. This is going to help us improve the number of drivers who are willing to work with Lyft rather than Uber better, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's fast ROI numbers.
Yes, and not phony numbers. A lot of companies just come up with numbers. Oh, this is the return on investment is X number of dollars. Well, the assumption that they put into it usually is not very accurate or based on reality and facts on the ground. What they are, the assumption, the average is $25. I assume $25. Maybe the farthest thing from truth, but nobody questions it. The value of this is people who are conscientious to go out, walk the process, go look at the number of dollars per hour, come up with the validation of this, get the CFO to buy off on it. That's when it's real. Otherwise, most companies, they say, we have a great model, very sophisticated. What did you put into it? Oh, a bunch of assumptions. And nobody questions the assumptions. We want to get away from that kind of model. We want to be as specific and as scientific as we can. Great. Thank you.
You had it.
So,
Yeah.
questions?
Just one question. In the diagram, there is processing time, then lead time.
Yes.
And what is percentage, T percentage?
Okay, percent complete, percent accurate, right? This is a quality metric. So every process produces something for the next processing line. If it's not close to 99%, guess what? There's rework. The process eventually has to say, I have 5 applications that are missing these 6 fields or 2 things. And you got to go back and say, can you process this? Can you contact somebody? Can you do an email? Can you look at whatever it is? Anytime you have either accuracy or completeness issues, guess what? It turns into huge amount of rework, huge number of emails, huge follow-up, and your process costs go up exponentially. So maybe 10% of those applications, but because you spend so much time on them, all of a sudden the average processing time for each application goes from 4 hours to 8 hours because of those 10% that are incomplete or inaccurate. So working on improving the percentage of complete and accurate as an output for the next process is a key focus area. If it's not in the 90s, then you probably need to work on it.
Okay.
So do you need a break? The question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you
How
have,
many of you need a break?
yes, 10-minute break?
5.
10 is good?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to start the course in 10 minutes.
You want to?
All of this was preparation. We'll give it a break?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll give it a break. We'll give it a break. All right. So right now, time is almost 2:30. How about 2:40 to start? 2:40 is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2:40 to start.
So, Hamid.
Yes, sir.
Okay, again.
Right.
So,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
you already covered.
Yeah. And what I was going to also suggest is before we jump into this in detail, we would basically spend maybe 5 minutes or something like that just to jump here to the Scale Agile Framework thing. This is called scaleagileframework.com. It's made up of full essentials, whatever. These are have links to all the ideas. This is what SAFE is, and we're going to talk about the details.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Good. Yeah, we can start from there.
Yeah. Just high level overview. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
one level is incredible how much energy is in the battery. There's another level. How quickly you go right. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Very good presentation.
From a standpoint, whoever. Yeah. Yes. You need to keep some time. Yes. There's some pillars or something here.
They used to have payroll affixed.
Oh, I see.
They moved that's what they have. The biggest challenge is I think actually being around proving that there's value of having some form of structure around managing work.
Yes.
There's a lot of different methodologies, Agile, all kinds of different ways of organizing to get work done. But nobody can ever truly A/B test this kind of thing. So one of the problems I always make is they might say, well, look at this research over here. This research says these are some statistics, whatever they are. We're different.
Yes.
right? And that's a difficult thing for, I find that really difficult thing for the company. So then people end up doing what they think is the right thing to do. So they just sort of present
What they want.
what they want. That's been a huge.
Even if what they want, as long as it's based on some foundational principles, then it's good. Otherwise, it becomes chaotic.
Right.
Talk about it a little bit.
Right, exactly. So that's sort of chaotic situation. And it's almost a self-fulfilling situation once it becomes chaotic. Nobody wants to believe saying that chaotic.
Yes, you do. Yeah, to be exact, there's 6 minutes left. But if you guys are ready, we can start anytime. Well, of course, yep.
And even if I forget, please remind us about our today's session retrospective. What we've got, what we've
Yes,
done
yes.
good, what we need to improve.
Yes. And we'll try to do that before 4 o'clock. So this is if you want to show the as a reference. Actually, you have it online, so.
And
Yes.
50% of the slides are still left there.
Yes. We're not going to give you a full 3-day course in the next 2 hours.
And there's a lot of things done with the course that we have taken 5 days.
Yeah.
So this is a 5-day course.
Yeah, it's actually, but it could be. I mean, we have done, you can take the safe portion of it and make it 5 days. You could take business model portion of it, make it 3 days. I mean, this could be an expansive 2-week course, but we took the key elements just to introduce the concept. If you say, have I learned lean today? No. You've just been exposed to the basic ideas.
And what happens is when you start putting this in on campus, on site, where people need to do, they'll start solving real problems.
Yeah, that's the most important value.
That's what is going to be valuable.
Yeah. Yes, and there's a lot of pointers that at any point we want to implement in real case scenario. There's so many pointers that we can dig through and find much more information.
But these ideas are the edge of the disciplines that are out there for new product development methods, for recreating organizations to be more, I would say, higher throughput, higher productivity, cultural change, all of that stuff. These are the disciplines and tools that you'll find in every organization now. We're trying to do some type of transformation to be able to compete more effectively. And I think most organizations will not have the choice but to adopt some of these disciplines because the world is becoming more and more competitive and faster speed. So everybody has to figure out how they want to leverage some of these concepts at some point. I think we're almost, There you are. I'm going to turn it on. Hope that it stays on. Right. So actually, let's run that. Yeah.
So this section, we are going to cover a lot on the Scale Agile framework and agility implementation execution aspects in general. There are almost 50% of the slides. I'm not going to walk through all of them. We are going to skip a few of them and see if you have questions, then we can come back to answer some of them. But before we get on to that, I just wanted to show this ScaleAgileFramework.com website, what it contains, and it will have all the description that you want to look at. We will briefly cover some of these slides with specific references to each one of these, what's happening, very briefly, but at any time you want, you can just go in and look at what each one is. Everything is a link. So if you look at that. It'll show you what the product owner is, what's their role, and you can walk through the details, what they need to do, what their responsibilities are, everything.
Everything hyperlinked.
Right? So what's a product manager? What's a product owner? What's the role and responsibilities of each one of those? What's the team? Everything is there in this website. Okay. So we can talk. If you have specific questions, I can answer that. We can talk about that. But otherwise, in general, to get more idea on what's there, you can just go and look at these websites by yourself. Now,
so one thing I would caution is that you got to select a configuration.
That's right.
Yeah.
So right now he's focusing on the essential phase, but you can do full phase.
Yes, a bit broader framework.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
good point. This essential safe was most of the safe that was there in Scaled Agile Framework 1.0.
Yep.
As they started evolving, they started adding more and more information, more and more complexity. What happened was it was difficult to engage some large organizations. They said, oh, you're not covering anything in portfolio side of things. Okay. They added the portfolio section. Okay. So they started adding, how do you get the strategic teams? How do you bring all those things into picture? How do you include budgeting aspects? How do you connect them to the release trains that you need to implement? How are each teams get involved in each of those? How they are brought together in a programming increment planning, which is PI planning. All of those things they started adding. We will talk about, actually, maybe this is a good time to talk about. Previously, in Scaled Agile Framework 2.0 or something, they had what was called as release planning. And what they had was, Agile says release often. And how do you release them? You bring every 10 weeks, every 12 weeks, you just bring everything together and you release it. And how you plan for the release, that's the planning that happens, and they called it release planning. Then they found out that nobody wants to release every 10 weeks. Maybe some want to release every 2 weeks. Some want to release every 6 months. So let's not connect release and this exercise together. So they called it a program increment. And then there is a different way to align releases with program increments. So all of those things have evolved. And so what you see now is the program increment planning here and multiple iterations, what you do planning for those multiple iterations. And then there is an innovation and planning. Before it used to be called HIP, hardening, innovation, and planning. So it was hardening for the previous cycle and innovation and planning for the next cycle. So they removed the hardening aspect. They made it outside of this planning aspect because you could harden at any time and release to customer at any time, not just at 10-week boundary kind of thing. So those kinds of changes happen. If you go back to Scaled Agile Framework 2.0, 3.0 and all, you will see those kinds of different thinking. But what you see now is
you have to wait now.
This is important actually. So that's the portfolio side of things, how you connect it to multiple release trains, how you connect them to multiple teams and multiple planning cycles.
New bulb.
So if you look at just the large solution thing, it talks about how a solution train can have multiple release trains and how each of those release trains can have multiples of these. So that's another way of looking at how do you bring different people in different trains into the cycle. There is this supplier thing that came here because they had in 4.0, before 4.0 came, they had saved LSE, large scale enterprise. So that's where this concept came in, and they absorbed it into large solution space. And the full SAFe now includes all of those pictures in some way. And this has the whole description of what you do everywhere, from the budgeting, from where you start from an organizational perspective or a company perspective, down to the smallest team.
And
So
Epic owner is portfolio level?
Epic, so yes. So there are different definitions for Epic.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you look at Epic in Jira, there is only Epic and Story. Whereas if you look at it in Rally or version 1 or somewhere, they have multiple levels, initiatives, themes, epics, all of those things. So at the highest level, epics could be the large.
Does that mean a product level epic, or they're even bigger than product?
Even bigger than product.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I have another question though.
Yes.
Sorry. In the program section, I haven't really closely looked at this.
Mhm.
But the program section, they call out DevOps.
Yes.
As in addition to team.
Yes.
Right.
So one of the most important things why DevOps has become so important is there is the upfront customer interaction part where you want to understand the customer requirements, you want to work with them closely and develop what they are actually looking for. But you won't get the feedback if you cannot deploy that capability quickly to the customer.
Customer meaning external customers.
External customers. Okay. If you are working with external customers, so be it. If there is a, let's say in a Cisco type environment, there is a business unit that has outsourced some of the IT work into an IT department. Now, they give some requirements. If the IT department says, yeah, I got this requirement, I understood, come back after 6 months, I'll give it to you. That's not good enough. How do you translate what you have understood into a product, deploy it, and deliver it quickly? That's where multiple teams are coming together and bringing things together. That's where DevOps becomes very important.
But in the,
An automation aspect of it.
Yeah.
yeah, but in a lot of software development engineering teams, DevOps is part of the team, the R&D team. So yeah, it could be. The volume 2 can actually be one volume 2.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, you can do that in your essential state. Let's see.
It also
Got it.
depends. It also depends on what product you're delivering. So
Yeah.
if it's a very narrow focused product where the product team, the product owner, and you have maybe three separate teams that are delivering that product, you may have jobs inside and better within them
Got it.
that are coordinating.
Yeah.
But once you have something as large as this,
Yeah.
you will need a team
And dedicated.
that's going to be helping your Agile release train get out the door.
Yeah.
See, remember when it says DevOps, the responsibility comes to the developer. There is the DevOps team may have created the tools and techniques necessary, but it's all operated by the developer. There is no other team that's coming in. This is another big culture shift that needs to happen in many organizations. They have release engineering teams. There is test teams. There is delivery team, all sorts of different teams. I went through all of these when we were transforming in Cisco. Of course, I hope things have integrated now more better, but that's a big culture shift that they all need to come together. So when I release my product, when I release my capability as a developer, it can go through the entire cycle, and I can even deliver it to my customer through DevOps, through the mechanism that is created by DevOps, but it's operated by me as a developer. So there is no separate person coming in and taking this capability and delivering it to the customer. Okay. So yeah, any questions on this that you might have already seen that you may want to ask now? Otherwise, we'll go through the slides and cover that. Yes.
So how does the portfolio management layer interact with the the management layer and the layer below him? Like, what is the frequency?
So this is something that we actually talked about. Some of that is weekly defined here, WEAKLY. No, it's not weekly period. But the thing is, some of the value stream mapping techniques, some of the other techniques that you need to use to decompose into solution trains, agile trains, all of those things, release trains, you need to do on a regular basis. The budgets may be set annually or a little more often than that, maybe quarterly kind of thing. But usually, some of these things have been planned out for a year at the highest level. You need to translate that to the capabilities at the lower level.
I was just going to say, you're going to end up the center of excellence, in essence, the shared resources. That portfolio management kind of lives in that world where you're kind of deciding, given my company being this big and 2,500 IT employees and this kind of portfolio, what value streams, how many teams, all of that detail has to be defined. And what do you want to do with your portfolio? It has to be defined based on your strategic themes. So all of this is being created to connect what we talked about, aligning with the business strategy. What are you doing and why? I'm spending a lot of money on IT, but I'm not sure why I'm spending it, meaning that it's not connected to a specific strategy. It's just a cost center. It costs us 12% of our revenues and goes on all the time. And depending on who's got the biggest political position, their favorite project gets done. We have a CRM project this year. Next year is ERP, and next year is something else. There is no specific direct connect back to why and what are we doing specifically to help enable that. So that's why Prakash and I were discussing that this is actually good progress compared to 3 or 4 years ago, where there wasn't as much connection, but still is not strong enough. Some of the discussions we're having about the business model and eventually driving that towards specific value streams that has to be touched around capability that you want to develop, then translating that into specific solution trains or release trains, and how exactly do you deploy these resources. To us, those are the connections that are critical, which requires you to understand your business strategy. It's not insufficient to just, our strategic theme is to be customer focused, high quality, and fast to market. Well, okay, who doesn't want to be those things? What does it mean specifically to your industry and your company and your competitive environment? So we think there has to be more done to make that linkage stronger and explicit, and the metrics have to be stronger to our mind. The metrics that you see here is mostly about software engineering metrics.
And that's a model, that's basically a generalized model, like say, it's just a roadmap. So we need to take that and implement it in our given environment. There are, for instance, in some environments, there's customer relation management system of a specific company that has one portfolio manager that's part of the PMO office. That would look at it from the portfolio view of sales. And that would be completely different than from, let's say, from ERP services of Amazon is doing the portfolio manager or PMO program manager of services, ERP services, Amazon application of sales is totally different than, for instance, customer support services. So this is just a roadmap, and I think.
And the key is to us is connected back to what matters in your business,
right.
And not too many companies spend enough time thinking about how to do that. Alignment and making that clear and transparent to us is a success factor. Companies who do that well actually have better results. They know why they're investing. They can track the results. They can show and get everybody behind the projects. And transformation actually is enabled when I know why I'm doing it. If I'm just doing things differently because of it's agile, I can tell you the number of people who want to get away from it is much more significant, 60%, sometimes 70%, compared to if you're doing it specifically to achieve a certain position in the marketplace through changes in capability in these 4 areas, which translates into our new approach focusing on these capabilities. Those connections just helps build momentum and support.
So another thought to explain why DevOps is put there. a very important concept is develop on cadence and release on demand. The two have to go together. Now, the reason for this synchronization is that there is a cadence here, synchronization. So development is happening on cadence. Now, if it's just one team that's doing things, then there is no need to synchronize with anything else. They can just keep on releasing. Now, because there is a release on demand aspect, you need to bring all these things together at different points. There is an enabler coming in here, a feature being released here, something else happening somewhere else. So you can release at any time in between, within that 2-week cycle. You then do a continuous integration, continuous deployment and delivery to customer at this point. So that's why DevOps is sitting there, so that everything can come together, automatically tested and delivered to your customer.
It takes a lot of effort to create that shared infrastructure and a common process that allows you, there's many companies in the Valley that are continuously, every hour sometimes, they're changing and deploying to a small customer set and slowly expanding it across regions and across sort of capabilities they're trying to get out there. That happens only through thoughtful planning. And that's why you have a DevOps. So it's both cultural as well as tools, as well as technologies, as well as process.
And what I didn't see is like computers there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the part.
Yeah, because most of the value of Agile comes when you have good DevOps. Without DevOps, you really struggle with the same traditional issues that you've always had.
And just keep in mind that besides DevOps, no ops is coming.
No ops.
That's actually being practiced, and keep in mind it's coming.
The next big thing. Huh?
Okay, so let's go back to a little bit of fundamentals on why agility, why it's required in transformation, what it's going to provide to us. So you may have all these 6 months, 1 year, 2-year projects that are all, you know what needs to be done upfront, you know the technology, you can estimate them very well. And still, actually, you see most of the projects that are these kind of big projects traditionally have failed to deliver at the expected time. Whatever we have estimated has always turned out to be wrong because we have never been very good at estimating all these large projects that are there. So still, if we say that waterfall is the way to go, you can do that for well-understood projects. And if you're building a bridge, you've built that kind of bridge many times. You know what it takes to build. So it's not very hard to estimate how much time it takes to do that. But our software projects are something that you haven't done the same type of project again and again. It's a new project every time. If it was not a new project, then it doesn't need to be in software. So saying that waterfall will work very well for most of the software projects is a wrong assumption. So traditionally, waterfall can work very well for well-understood projects which have little variance. You're doing repeated implementations and less uncertainty. So typically, small projects where you know the requirements very well, where the technology is known, you can use waterfall. Whereas if the technology is new, you haven't tried it out, or if the requirements are new, you don't know how it's going to work. Customer doesn't understand the requirements. In all these kind of cases, it's a complicated project that you need to embrace Agile. Now, of course, if everything is far from agreement, requirements are not known, or the technology is not known, in all these cases, it's a very complex project. Sometimes many of these startups that are doing totally new things, they embrace these kinds of environments, and generally what is said in those cases, it's a lean startup type of a situation. And there is a chart later that will talk about comparing Agile and the lean startup. It's in your package. we can discuss that. This matrix is called safety matrix, where you can really find out what kind of projects are appropriate in what situation. So that's Agile, applying Agile. I have written a lot of blogs. If you go on my LinkedIn, you can see many of the blogs that talks about when is Agile suitable, why is it suitable, how it can be made suitable for your project. You can look at that. It gives a very good idea about when it is appropriate. So we looked at value proposition canvas, customer experience journey to understand what we need to build. Those are all utilities for us to understand the requirements. Building vertical slices of functionality. This is the DevOps side of things, where you can really slice what you need to build, deliver to the customer quickly, get the feedback, so that you can learn. The whole Agile and DevOps and all of these is how you can learn very quickly from deploying the customer. Otherwise, there's no point in doing Agile.
Or failing fast.
Yeah. So we can systematically experiment and try out new technologies. How do you do that? You saw in that picture there were enabler capabilities. There are architecture spikes you can put in to make sure that whatever you do next, you can build on those architecture spikes. You can build the architectural runway or the UX runway a little before the rest of the features come in, and you can smoothen your whole product development life cycle. So all of those things are enabled in the Agile framework and definitely in SAFe as well.
One thing
Yes.
covered. So systematically experiment applying new technologies, spikes, runway.
Yes.
So a lot of people when they're running and doing even say complicated projects, especially technology architecture is changing. What do you call it?
What do you call the team, you mean?
No, what do you do? Like, how do you say the architecture is actually being accounted for, and how do you actually account for it in the right way when you're doing tweak to PI planning increments?
So can you repeat the question again? No, repeat the question.
How is architecture accounted for when you are slicing vertically?
Yes.
But you don't know the architecture.
Sure.
Yeah.
So where building the architecture phase is, I take 6 months to build a brand new architecture, and then I'm going to start building features on top of that. And the moment I build the first feature, I find out that the whole thing that I did for the 6 months, half of it is useless. That's where the whole plans fail. So what do you do is to actually build enough architecture for you to develop some capability to test it out with the customer. So that's the architecture runway. I think I've introduced another term called the component-oriented teams and feature-oriented teams.
Yeah.
When you have a structure where you have, in the company, you have organized into component-oriented teams, people will say, my job is just building this architectural component. I don't care how it's going to be for a feature. Then that's a failure scenario. You need to be able to understand how what you're building is adding value to the customer. So you build enough architecture, enough infrastructure component, and build a feature on top of that to see how it meets the needs of the customer. So that's why there is a meaningful division as to what you need to consider as building an architecture, and that's the architecture runway aspect of it. When you have architects sitting in an ivory tower and building the architecture, it's not going to work. That's why even in SAFe, an architect is part of a team, but they may be part of another group that comes together to decide what the architecture needs to be, but they have to be part of an execution actual team, which is also building capability. Only in those kind of situations, the whole structure will work better.
So and also you have, sorry, I was going to add to that.
Yeah.
So the enterprise architecture is another component of the overall full state framework. And the idea is that there is certain level of planning that has to happen at a portfolio level. So as an example, if you're building a digital platform that will be responsible for integrating all next generation set of capabilities across a suite of applications, right? There are certain things you can postpone. There are certain things that have to be defined up front. If you're going out with a whole new user experience to the client base, it cannot be a random thing of having 5 different teams doing different kinds of user interface and style sheets. Somebody has to set some standards. Somebody has to decide certain basic minimums, right? The basic minimums that have to be chosen now have to be taken, but you want to preserve options. So there's a series of principles that we get into the guts of this that says that you're not going to create an ivory tower architectural vision that says for the next 5 years, we'll be here. What we will do is set the minimum foundations that we need to have for the next set of features that have to be deployed. We will create architecture runways just in time, and we will postpone architecture choices to the latest time possible, meaning that I don't have to commit myself even to a certain integration platform until the very last minute that somebody needs that decision made. Why do I do that? Because I want to make sure that I learn as much as possible about things that could be going well or things that could go wrong with that process, and then I commit myself at the very last moment. So one of the basic fundamental principles is preserve options. Always preserve options. So whenever you try and solve a problem, you will identify 2 or 3 ways of doing it. You will go down maybe 3 spikes to test all 3. And at some point, which is the last stage by which you have to have this capability, you will make a commitment. So you will push the decision to the latest time possible, and you will always preserve options. What does that do? It allows you to experiment with emerging technology. Imagine having to commit yourself to a certain blockchain technology now, when things are continuously evolving. Certain things are easier, certain things are difficult. So when there are more unknowns and more issues that may come up, you want to postpone the choices as late as possible in the process, and you want to build just enough to enable the features and the capabilities that you want to be able to deploy. Those are fundamental principles behind how you approach these kind of projects. And accommodating change is the basic tenets of this kind of approach. Change is not going to disrupt everything that you've done. Change is just another idea that has to be incorporated. And you're always working on the highest value items. And the next program increment, the next 10 weeks, just dedicated to the highest value that you could do. And the architecture runway is built just in time to enable those program increments to be delivered. Those are the basic fundamentals behind the framework.
Yeah, so I think what you are describing is the methods that you apply when you are creating new product access. I think based on what Sudhanshu might be asking is on the enterprise IT domain.
Yes.
Where can we take the ownership for the architecture evaluation?
Sure.
So I think you answered that to some extent that it is at the portfolio level. Yes, you need to have that enterprise architecture team
You got it.
to make that assessment of whether what amount of standardization and integration you want to achieve at that level. So you set the foundation for execution, and after that, the teams that are below that, they make their process architecture, data architecture, and application system architecture at their level to utilize their foundation for execution.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you may say, I want to go microservices, or I want to have an API engine that runs the whole environment. Well, you cannot make those decisions necessarily all right now, but you can maybe say 2 or 3 options are available to me for me to manage my API-based environment. But I wanted to experiment with 3 different platforms. I want to have this from Google, this from Amazon, this from Microsoft. I want to experiment with all of them until it's time. So there's 3 spikes going on. Until I'm ready to commit myself to the first set of APIs that has to be used to wrap certain legacy mainframe applications. At the time that this has to be available, I now need to commit myself. I look at everything that I learned through the spikes, and I say, Google, that's the way to go. The Google API approach for this particular kind of problem that I'm trying to solve as a part of my digital platform is the way to go. And from that moment on, all teams will be informed of the choices you just made. And everything that they do, anything they develop, has to comply with those specific decisions. Same thing with the user experience platform. Same thing with the idea of integration. All of these things, some decisions are strategic and critical. You just don't want to take them without knowing enough about the issues and the opportunities. Do the spikes, the last minute that the decision has to be committed, at that point on, the solution architects and the enterprise architects work with all the teams all the time so that make sure they are following those specific standards that you've now committed to. There's a whole series, again, we can get into the framework, there's a lot of discussion there. There's a whole series of specific enablers in the framework that allows you to commit yourself to certain things at the latest point in time. And there's principles that support that process that you can get into.
Yeah. So actually, you did bring up for the UX framework. It's a similar thing. We used to have all these UX people that would say, "Oh, I need 6 months to come up with the whole plan of how you do the UX UI for your product." That's not acceptable. By the time you come back, it's all obsolete. So it's like, how do you create the minimum that's required? Because I'm not going to be able to build everything in one day. I'm going to take another 6 months to build that. So why don't you give me the workflow, the user flow, and then some sample screenshots that I need to build initially, and then we can build it on. Because you think about all those things and you build all those capabilities, but you take it to the customer and they say, "This is useless. This is not how we operate." So you need to be able to take parts of that product and experiment it with your customers very quickly. So,
and then you will have actually these teams that are dedicated to these decisions, and their responsibility is to know what else is going on, all the other teams, to know when they need what decision made, and they contribute that information to that team just in time. That's the basic philosophy.
So, do you want to talk about
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, many organizations get into this and say, "I want to just transform everything, make it safe." Well, what do they have? They have a pretty diversified portfolio. They got the Oracle ERP or SAP ERP. They have the CRM from Oracle or Salesforce.com. They have all kinds of homegrown applications they've been building for the last 15, 20, 30 years. Some sitting on mainframe, in COBOL, some sitting on Unix, sitting in Pascal, so on and so forth. The list goes on and on and on. Where do you start? Do you just take all of these teams and say, "Okay, randomly, this 10 belongs to this group, this belongs to this group"? No, we can't do that. How do I organize it? So in essence, the SAFe methodology says there has to be a method to the madness of organizing our teams. First of all, when we first start, this is not what we do. When we first start, we want small successes. So the essential SAFe is where we start. We want to have small teams, 2 or 3 of them, working on the highest pain point areas to show results. We want to be able to say, "Hey, we've been doing this for the last 6 months, and look at what we accomplished here, here, and here. This can work." The next thing is, how do you do it across 1,000 people? How do you do it across the portfolio? Well, SAFe has, again, guidance for those kind of discussions. And one of those guides is basically using value streams as a way to organize ourselves around what is important to the business. And the idea is that I should only work in a continuous flow of activities that actually deliver a specific value to a customer that I have in mind. Okay? So value streams is the way to represent that. The current guidance doesn't go as far as specifically organizing the company to X number of value streams and how exactly do you think about your teams and all that. All it says is when you organize things, make sure you understand the operational value stream and the support value streams. Operational value streams depends on what business are you in. Are you in the business of developing software for financial services industry, or are you in the business of running paychecks? Each business has different value streams that they bring to the client. And operational value streams is really about what do you do as a business. Do you process mortgages? Do you sell travel to clients that are well off? All of those things have different elements of value creation. So the first thing that we want to do is understand what is that value stream that represents what we do as a company, right? And then that value stream may be at a level where it has to be broken into multiple lines of business. All of us are in businesses that have multiple lines of business, sometimes 5, 10, 15 different kinds of lines of business. You want to make sure that you understand the operational value stream for each one of those businesses that operate. And the next thing we want to do is we want to map the systems that we have to those value streams. So if I'm in the business of producing mortgages, there's a process that I follow. I want to find the customer, have them apply. I want to receive that application. I want to process that application. I want to underwrite that application. I want to inform the client and start collecting the payment for it. That's the broadest value stream. Now, what actually is done to support that is a mainframe that does this, a Windows application that does that, a cloud service that actually does a background check, so on and so forth. I want to be able to map all of the systems that support that entire end-to-end process.
So remember the exercise that you did, the previous one from the value stream recognition. These are the steps that you need to do from your next exercise, and then get to how you realize the value streams into AgiLeanIT stream.
So value stream is a great way to organize all of the systems and all the resources back to a methodology of understanding how work should be done in your organization. So once you understand the relationship between how value is created at the highest level in the line of business to the systems that currently support that, and there's a bunch of systems obviously here, then you have individuals today that are doing something for those systems, usually developers. Usually infrastructure is centralized, separate from development, but development teams are usually dedicated. Sometimes they're a shared pool as well. They just basically react to the requests that come in, and they try to do the best they can prioritizing. But in the world of SAFe, we don't have people who are just sitting there and doing just COBOL programming. In the world of SAFe, people are dedicated to achieve a specific highest value outcomes possible. So in that world, you map all of the resources who are knowledgeable or focused or dedicated to these systems, and then you want to be able to start organizing them into specific teams that together are part of a train and potentially a solution, the large solution train, basically. So what you're doing is you're using the value stream, the end-to-end process that creates a value for a client, to be able to drive the relationship between all the resources that support the systems that are in your portfolio. So it's no longer I have 125 systems, it's I have 8 systems that map this way to this 8 processes that create a loan. And these 8 systems are supported by 121 developers. And my strategic platform is going to be Java and and I'm going to build it in a microservices architecture, and I need to wrap a few of these systems, whatever strategies are. And these are the individuals that are going to contribute to producing this outcome future that I have in mind, that architecture, that's my digital platform of the future. Once you have that vision established, then you can start to say, these are the teams that are working on different aspects of the system. Some are working on infrastructure. A lot of them are working actual business features and stories that deliver the highest value capability that takes you to the next step. And if you, again, look at the map, the entire map, what you have is, if you will, the support value stream, which is the development of systems, is a support process. Processes that run your business are called operational value streams. Right? So what you're doing is you're mapping our development processes and resources to the operational value streams in the company. And at a portfolio level, you may have 5 lines of business with 8 lines of business within each and 20 functions within each, so on and so forth. You'd have to decide what those value streams are that are mapped, decide which ones are the most important, and then allocate resources appropriately if you have a couple of thousand people who are in IT. At the end, it becomes that whole broader discussion that requires a lot of interaction to us to get into the details of it. But the bottom line of it is that eventually these value streams become the actual release trains, agile release trains that deliver capability. And it's not based on skills and technology. It's based on delivering the value to the client on an end-to-end basis.
So
that's the basic idea.
Development value streams, are they more like what I call local teams? They can do the support for your operational value stream?
Well, there's support that goes on. You can say HR is a support function in business, as an example. Sure. Every company has to have a human resource support function. Their business is not just recruiting. Recruiting is an enabler of the business of delivering loans, as an example. You could call that also a support value stream from a business point of view. But from a development point of view, software development is, again, a support value stream. SAFe defines what that value stream should be and organizes it into program increments, iterations, and delivery on a 10-week cycle that's continuously planned for, retrospected, and eventually the next set of features and stories are delivered in that process. So the development aspect of this has already been predefined. SAFe is telling us how to organize and deliver at the optimal flow. It tells us this is how you choose the stories, this is how you do the analysis, this is how you get the teams together, this is how engineers and architects and UX people participate in this process, and here's the 8 people who are delivering X. And the X is 10 stories or 15 stories every 10 weeks as an example.
I just got into this slide because there were questions on the value stream and how do you identify them. So
yeah, so this is a long discussion because you get into business value streams, which are operational, and then support. You could say HR, again, support us.
Or like, for example, we have a component-based team that basically will always make sure that that particular component or technology
Yep.
goes into all the other features.
That's right. Exactly.
Right? So
Exactly.
what would you call that? Would that be a development support team?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they are. In that sense, you can call it system architecture team, or you can call them component team, however you want to define that.
And the
Yeah.
feature team is also the same.
Yeah. So I'm saying one more time.
And the feature team would also be called the same.
Yeah, basically, there's a team. As far as the process is concerned, they're working on either a business feature or an infrastructure enabler feature.
but those teams are actually contributing to a broader value stream. Yeah. So let me bring it.
Yeah, because this is a discussion you could actually whole day could be dedicated to the value stream mapping process. It's a complicated discussion topic that starts with the highest level of portfolio all the way down to the team.
Yeah, this is just another.
So this is another example. So this is a hospital patient. What happens when somebody is admitted to a hospital all the way through being discharged and paying for services, right? That's the highest level operational value stream. What supports that could be a single EHR, electronic health record system, or it could be a multitude of systems, right? You need to know what those systems are, and we need to be able to map all the systems back to these value stream activities, and then the actual developers who are working on these. So when we decide that this process has to be improved by whatever that thing is, I need to improve the triage process. I need to improve the billing process. I need to improve some aspects of this. Then there are systems involved in supporting each one of these activities that eventually produces better results here, collecting money a little faster, getting better quality results from the patients who are treated by us, so on and so forth. The support process here is operational. Just 2 examples. This could be recruiting, right? One of the support activities is information technology management and software development or infrastructure management. These are support activities. The life cycle of how we develop products or deliver services is basically using SAFe as a way to organize and deliver services. So we call that a support also.
Do you see some similarity with the customer experience journey that we talked about before? This is actually a customer journey through different modules of your internal process, right? There are all these different things that you need to do, and that's how you connect the customer journey down through value stream mapping and then development streams, and then. So I think you brought that question up before, and that explains here how the two are connected.
So the customer doesn't care about it.
Yeah, they are only interested in this journey. Yeah.
And they're experiencing the outcome from these activities. And they each have their own unique technology issues, enablers and disablers, basically that helps affect the outcome, right? So this bank that's trying to do actually a bank loan may actually have lots of problems in originating a loan, or lots of problems in servicing a loan, or lots of problems in who knows what the issues are. You need to figure that out. In your business, whatever business you're in, what is the value stream? Who gets value from it? How are you doing against your competitors? Why should you improve this portion of the value stream? And then once you've decided that, what are the systems? What are the resources? How do I organize them into teams and release trains to deliver certain capabilities, focusing on highest value and maximum number of releases possible, and continuously delivering value rather than waiting a year or 2 or 3. Right? That's the basic construct of a SAFe or Agile-based framework.
And connecting it from the highest level to the lowest execution level.
Okay, so whether we care about the hospital patient services depends on our strategy. So maybe this may be a portion of your business strategy, or maybe the core of your strategy. right? Somebody has to make the decision. If I have $5 million to spend, do I spend all of it here or 20% of it goes here? Which value stream gets what portion of my resources? And what do I expect from it? Most companies don't have that level of information. They just have 1,000 people who are working on stuff. Look at my backlog. It's forever. Okay.
Or at our levels or at the individual execution level, we may not be aware of things. There may be somebody that's making those decisions. We just need to be able to connect the two.
And unfortunately, in my experience, usually that connection, the CIO is responsible for that action of making sure that there's alignment between the business strategy and the investments that you make. And a lot of the CIOs maybe either come from technical backgrounds, so they're focused on technical things, the next blockchain thing, the next virtual server thing, so on and so forth, and they forget the business or they don't even understand the business. So you want to hire CIOs or individuals who actually have both of those experiences. What does it take to succeed in business and why? What does it take to deliver good technology capabilities to achieve your business results? Those individuals have the highest potential to give you maximum impact on business.
Again, this is another document values.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
We want to finish at 4, almost 3:30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, we'll just keep some of these things. This is just a tool to document your value stream. Maybe just 2 minutes if you want to say.
Well, let's do it this way. There's a lot of content in here about SAFe as a methodology, but why Agile, about why you should consider a scaled Agile methodology. There is some comparative charts in the appendix to your document that says this is how SAFe compares to a waterfall or Spotify or less, things of that nature. So there's a lot of reference material. This discussion that you started usually is covered in 4 days, and after that, we'll say, okay, I'm ready to ask questions. So don't feel bad if you feel overwhelmed, because none of this is intended to be digested in 2 hours. This is just giving you orientation and at least exposing questions in your mind. So you can say, yeah, there may be an answer for some of my questions someplace. So as long as you at least got the basic ideas of why Agile, why is scaled Agile, and what kind of questions can I ask, I think we've achieved the objective for this session. And if this is something that you do day to day, I would recommend a 2-day course of Leading SAFe or a 4-day course of implementation. There's a whole bunch of courses available, depending on who you are, from a product owner and product manager, all the way to the guy who has to run the Center of Excellence for my company around SAFe, as an example. The course is available. And even after you go through that, it's a continuous learning process. It's not something that you can master because you've done 4 or 5 days. It's ongoing learning. It's raising a question and answering it by talking to individuals. The key principle is really the key that we want to focus on.
In your pages 55 and 56, I think, there are some stuff that are put in on the comparison with waterfall and Agile and waterfall versus all other different kinds of scaling mechanisms. The hybrid mechanism is something that we evolved in Cisco which is a little different from SAFe. And if you guys have any questions on that one, feel free to shoot me an email and ask. Go ahead.
Oh, I guess I just wanted to share. You can go over to slide 63 and talk about the metrics.
Oh, sure.
And I turn around and off.
Okay, that's very good. All right, so the question is, if I'm starting with an Agile or scaled Agile initiative, what do I measure? And there's some basic fundamentals that it's a long discussion we can't probably get into here. But in essence, every team is going to have to develop a velocity of what is their, when you do estimation in SAFe or in Agile methodologies, relative estimation is advocated. So it's not absolute number of hours or days, it is relative estimation. That's basically the fundamental best practice. If doing relative estimation, the question of what do I measure against is team unique. What I mean by that is 8 hours of work within a team. So when I say, my story point number 1, which is develop this capability, is one story point, and that's my smallest thing, and that's 8 hours, that becomes my starting point. And then I use Fibonacci numbers, which is like a escalating, exponentially escalating set of numbers that says you jump from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to 8 to 13. So you have this difference between those estimations, and you always basically, human beings, it happens through research, people are very good at relative estimation. And the teams develop their own rhythm, if you will, on developing these estimates. You start to measure capacity against velocity, and you start to look at productivity, and there's a whole bunch of measures, but then cultural change also has to be measured. So there's a whole bunch of companies out there that create these radars that you actually do the surveys on an ongoing basis, and you decide how healthy are your Agile teams. So if you have 25 different teams, how do you know they're making progress towards the kind of behaviors and approaches that you want to see? There's surveys that you can do, and people that can actually say, this is how we're doing and how we're approaching this and that. And it allows you to see how well the culture is evolving to achieve the kind of productive outcomes you're looking for. So if you want to get into the specifics, there's actually within the Scaled Agile framework, a whole section around metrics. Just click on it, it gives you what you can measure and why.
Does they say that all teams should eventually be on the same standpoint?
No.
No, you don't need to be. It is basically, it's a question of people want to know how productive compared to, right, the rest of the world. Am I as productive or twice as productive, or how good is my team? And then the real discussion is, what are you delivering in terms of the most valuable features and capabilities? That's the value that you want to go ahead and evaluate. And the question is, how exactly this team is becoming more productive over time and becoming more consistent and delivering on time what they commit to, and how transparent that process is. So we can get into why these are the important factors and why budgeting should be done differently and all that. But that's all, again, you're getting into philosophies that has a lot of interactions that need to happen. Yes.
So I feel that organizing the people is kind of a period before you start implementing this kind of a framework, right? So let's take an example of IT.
Yes.
There are many teams that are horizontal, and there are some teams that are vertical.
That's right.
So if you are forming teams that are specific to a business outcome, like based on a value stream, there will be replication of people that you pick from the horizontal department, right? So in some attempts, there will be an increase in the usage of resources. So how do you balance the value?
All right. So that's a whole. That's a great question, but of course, again, since I'll promise you to got it. Let me answer it this way. You don't have to change reporting relationships to create this new teams. You can say, here's the 2 developers, 1 Java, 1 COBOL, 2 testers, 1 UX person, and 1 system architect. This is a team working on the load servicing application. And that team has a backlog, the team backlog that's based on the program backlog, based on the portfolio backlog, right? So they're working on a specific thing on some, again, cadence, which is, I'm going to do this 5 2-week cycles, so 5 iterations, 4, and then once you catch up or do innovation or do whatever. And that will be our goal to again, commit ourselves, get to demos, get to delivering something, and then moving on to the next planning cycle. We want to spend about 30 minutes talking about that, which is, how do you plan for a program increment? That will open up a bunch of discussions like this. That conversation is about how do you evolve 1,000 people who are doing different stuff. Some are dedicated to infrastructure, some are dedicated to development, some are shared development resources. How do I do that? Well, at the end, you take people who are the relevant resources, you put them into a team, and they're dedicated. They're no longer doing stuff for other people. They're dedicated to delivering value to that team forever, basically. So the idea that DDI and maintenance and enhancement of separate things goes away. You're continuously looking at your mainframe, looking at Unix, looking at Windows, continuously modernizing, continuously delivering new features, continuously going to new architectures, and you do this forever. That's the idea. Different than traditional, I'm done a 3-year project, and now I'm a maintenance. No. In the Agile world, you're continuously delivering value based on business priorities. Now, how you reorganize to achieve that is a whole different discussion. We can have that discussion later.
Yeah. So before we move on from the metrics slide, I want to emphasize that one of the reasons why metrics becomes a double-edged sword, sometimes top leadership tries to use that to compare teams.
Yes.
We
And that's-
don't
Really don't want to compare.
we don't want that concept to be there, and that's one of the reasons why the metrics for what's your size of a story is not necessarily standardized.
Yeah.
SAFE does have a guidance on what it should be, but it's very important to educate the top leadership on how they should not be comparing across teams. So even when you get the metrics, we've been careful. I've been careful in transforming groups to make sure that the metrics are all related to a particular team, and the team has to keep on improving on how they are doing, not necessarily comparing team A versus team B. Okay, that's how the metrics need to be used. Otherwise, what happens? Cheating stuff. People will just break, this whole system breaks. So we don't want to encourage those kinds of behaviors. What is important is to make sure that we are always improving. That's the whole purpose of Agile. Continuous improvement. Right?
It's a different way of thinking about portfolio management, project management, and how you deliver value. Again, sometimes at odds with the traditional way of thinking about projects. Some people ask, why SAFE? Why is it popular? Who's doing it? There's a lot of case study examples available both at the website. This is what's going on. I can tell you from, again, the experience of following the methodology development folks for the last few years, they're the most popular at the moment. Research from Gartner and Forrester now, all that shows probably an interest of 2 to 3 times higher than competing methods. Not that it's the perfect thing for everybody. It's just the most popular one in terms of adoption in a lot of IT organizations. So if you're interested in the scaled Agile, you wouldn't go wrong by immersing yourself in SAFE, meaning it's going to be one of the more popular frameworks that's going to be out there. And that doesn't mean that less is less suitable for you, as an example. It just means that it's one of those frameworks that will be around and relevant. So we can get into why it's popular, but the key point is that you need to be able to, if you are the leader of transformation as it relates to IT and Agile, you need to be able to translate these kind of benefits to your company's situation. So things like 30 to 75% faster time to market, so 25 to 75% increase in productivity, 20 to 50% quality improvement, 10 to 50% employee engagement. This is the kind of benefits that are possible across many use cases or many case studies that we've seen out there. You want to be able to translate these to a specific opportunities for your organization when you try to talk to your management about why should we do Agile and what should we do scaled Agile specifically. So just want to kind of point this out to you. And the last thing is to go to the actual case study that we'd like to run.
So there are many slides there. The materials in those slides are also covered in my blog, how the team structure should be, what should be your team composition, some of the things that you asked about. I have covered many of them in the blog. Take a look at that and ask questions. We won't have time to go through each one of the slides here, but generally what kind of skills we expect as a team member, the XP practices that we want to have in a good engineering team, how they all fit together, Agile, XP, DevOps, and Lean, end-to-end, how all these things fit together. They've all been explained in many of those blogs.
I think probably need a whole day just on that topic.
Yeah.
This topic that we're covering in 2 hours is a 4-day study. You can start getting into the details of each one of these areas with about 10 or 15 exercises that help you understand the flow and the size of the story. All of that stuff is really important concepts that you need to experience firsthand to be able to start to think about it that way. I want to bring this up since we want to get out of 4. Specifically, the program increment planning, right, is one of the key exercises that happens at the beginning of each 10-week cycle. And we wanted to have you at least experience or think about how to actually bring the right people together, what topics to talk about, who gets involved, how do they do this. We have on the sheet a typical 2-day schedule that is dedicated. So every time you're done with the one program increment, you start planning for the next increment. This is the 2-day process that you go through to decide what happens in the next program increment. So this is the typical agenda for day 1, typical agenda for day 2. You'll notice here that there's specific presentations about the product and solution vision. You have people who have thought about. So this may be a 2-day exercise, but a architect may have worked on something for 2 months to come up with their presentation about X. A user experience platform guy may have spent 6 months on something and is presenting it as a part of the vision to the team. So early on, what you're presenting is whatever planning work has been done to create that architecture, create that components and product pieces to the puzzle, the vision that you have, the benefits that you're looking for, and then you're presenting all of that to the team, everybody, so everyone understands what you're trying to accomplish. Then you ask teams to go into their specific discussions and start talking about, okay, if I'm building X, I'm trying to sell books now, compete with Amazon. How do I do that? How do I turn these ideas of features into specific stories? And how do I commit myself to certain business value being delivered in the next 10 weeks? All of that happens in the process of 2 days of interaction.
And remember that there can be 10 teams that are doing that. I mean, you cannot deliver a product that is competing with, let's say, Amazon type of thing by one team of 5 people doing things in a couple of weeks or even couple of months. You cannot. There may be multiple teams. How do you bring all those teams together? What do they do? How the team breakouts happen? How do you bring them together after the breakout and see what are the dependencies? You may be making an assumption that, hey, this team is delivering me something at this time. Is it happening? Have you prioritized those capabilities that that team wants? Let's say this is a component infrastructure team, and that's a feature team that needs to come together to deliver an end-to-end feature. Is it? How are the dependencies managed? All of those things happen during these kinds of reviews after the team breakouts and they come together. And then you go back, you do the adjustments, and then another breakout, and then like that. So multiple iterations of these kind of things, the teams come together. We will simulate similar kind of things here, saying you do a first 15-minute review within your team. Let's say, for example, whatever you decided for a senior driving, bringing a senior driver on board, what do you need to do? Where you need to do the enhancement, whatever development you need to do? What are all the infrastructure components that you need to build, if there is something that you need to build? And then you come together to discuss on inter-team dependencies. Maybe you don't have to, if both of you have the same goal, which is the case in this situation, you don't want to have both of you build the same capabilities. You want to have some complementary capabilities which you have discussed already, and then build that. And what are the dependencies? What are your assumptions? Have you met all the needs for each other? How do you integrate them together? And then you discuss that and then present it to the So that's the exercise. Right. It's a very minimal mocking of the 2-day exercise. It's not doing justice to that, but we want to give you an experience
just
on
taste of what it's like. Yeah. So you're gonna have 2 teams.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, please.
This is team level of the 2-day agenda, right? So if this
Notice
program level, this
everybody.
is the release train level.
This is everybody.
So the participant who said individual roles within a team, show SM and the rest of the team.
Yes.
That's part of my question. I thought this would be a program level.
No, that's a program level. But when you say team breakout,
that's the team breakout.
Yeah.
That's the team breakout here.
Yeah. So you're one of the teams.
Yeah.
So I was going to go one step further. And what do you think about the idea that this team is working on enablers or infrastructure or architecture, and this team is working on actual business features? And specifically, this is for the elite driver. You're trying to expand functionality maybe of the existing app. So this application exists. And what you're trying to now use the application to do more for elite driver onboarding, something like that. Come up with the idea. One of you to act as a product owner, somebody who understands things that you want to go ahead and do. Another maybe developer, another maybe scrum master, kind of having those discussions together. And you'll do that by a little bit of thinking about individually, maybe for 3 minutes. And kind of eventually what you want to do is say, this is what I'm planning to do, but I have dependency on single sign-on, or I have dependency on X, Y, or Z, whatever those things are. This team actually has to work on the infrastructure side. What are the enablers, the architecture choices, the key capabilities have to be in place to enable something that they're working on. And assume that you've heard the product vision already. You already have heard the story about what you want to do with the next generation Lyft product or the platform. And start thinking about what you will develop and deliver when. These will be infrastructure features or capabilities that you're trying to develop. And then when you get together, you'll understand the interdependencies that they have on your stuff and you need to enable based on their timeline.
Yeah. Remember, each team needs to have all these minimally required roles. A Scrum Master, a product owner, preferably in this case, an architect needs to be there. I mean, of course, we don't have that many people to represent, but a UX person, So all of these, and then the rest of the team, and each one plays their role, but at the same time, there is no hierarchy within the team. Everybody is allowed to speak. That's the kind of team environment that's required for this kind of a discussion.
You each have our subject matter expertise, and you can, whenever you don't know something, assume something as you see fit.
Yeah.
We assume X. We assume somebody already has defined the experience platform, whatever it is. So just define whatever assumption you need to define.
What are the challenges have you seen or faced with regards to PI planning? This is a 2-day work, but
That's right.
it requires a lot of planning.
Correct. Yeah.
And then this is again, once you've done the planning, the outcome of that is going to take another 10 weeks to
Correct.
So what challenges have you seen in just with that?
You mean planning itself or?
The PI planning.
Right. Well, it's how much preparation you've done. In essence, sometimes it's hard to get everybody organized to dedicate themselves to produce what is needed in terms of product vision, what does success look like, how do you measure success, what is the architectural platforms that we have to have defined for PI planning to work, all of those things, all the prep that goes into whatever that first session is. It could be something as simple as just learning, let's just try it. One of the good things about Agile is that because it's flexible, you can come in and whatever you run into, you could react to and kind of learn from it. The retrospective is really the learning opportunity for us. We do something, we work with each other, some things work, some things will not work. That's always the case. We learn what didn't work and come up with new ways and approaches to say, oh, that's probably hired an architect 6 months ago. We don't have it. Let's go make sure the next PI planning has at least this kind of work done at a minimum to be able to enable this. Or let's just dedicate somebody to this to go define it and make those decisions and let other team members know. The point is that it's designed to be flexible enough to recover from most situations, but the less planning that you do, the more difficulties you will run into in general, right? So it's better to think through the vision, the platform, the architecture, and bring that information and the vision to the discussion. The more planning you do, the better off you will be during the planning.
How about the executive onboarding of the PI planning itself? Because that's
huge. Yeah.
That has been the main
Yes,
failure factor.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line is that everything we're talking about is significant commitment, right, from the entire organization. And many times, if you don't have executive support, you will not have half the resources you need. Some people are willing and excited to be there. Others have other priorities. Unless they've been told from the very top, everything else is going to the side until it is done, you will not get the kind of outcome that you need.
So people dedicated full time, not just for the PI planning exercise, for whatever they need to do as part of the team. That's another challenge. Another challenge, SAFE recommends that bring in all the people for face-to-face discussion, face-to-face discussion. In our environment, I've seen it's almost impossible to bring everybody into this.
A lot of offshoring.
So, I've put some blogs together which is talking about how the teams should be structured. Cisco was notorious in terms of how distributed the teams were. And wherever I've gone for transformation, I've reorganized those teams to have, at the team level, mostly local resources, whereas maybe at the program level, they can be distributed. So when we did the PI planning, we had great facilities for with telepresence and all. We used to have each team in their breakout being local altogether, but when they're presenting to the manager and when they're coming at the program level, they are in telepresence room. So we had virtually being together. But that was a big challenge. To get to that, you had to have an organization in such a way that the teams at least were local, individual team members. And that was a challenge.
But in today's market, it's almost impossible to have a large enterprise organization that has all the PI team members localized.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why in the blog that this was 5 years ago, still I had told that it's impossible to have at the program level, everybody being local in one location. Yeah. You need to have a sensible way of organizing the teams. And that comes to your team organization question that Dharman, you were asking.
Yeah. So human interaction is the core part, right? So in Agile, the 4 key precepts of the Agile approach. Human interactions, right? That's the core foundation for being able to achieve results. And the more you can bring people together physically, face to face, the better off we are. But of course, that's very challenging in a large organization.
Right.
So please start. I want to get you out of here as close to 4 o'clock as we can. But I want to make sure that you get as much value also. You only have a few minutes left. So let me suggest it's about 3:50. Let's spend maybe the next 10 minutes in discussion. Come up with your plans, discussions, at least think through what do I need to be able to deliver these infrastructure capabilities or enablers. And you guys decide what the features are and what is your maybe story points that you want to focus on in the next program increment.
You might want to put it for charging.
Yeah. I'm okay. Yeah. I'm at, let's see, what's it? Maybe I'll charge it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. We will not be talking.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I try to maximize the pool, but I'm not doing a whole lot. Yeah, you're probably spending
So now they
So I
have
have
two
four
possible
tools.
types
One is the onboarding experience for the new driver.
normal ones.
So I'm wishing that we can do a
That
video
high
call
service
to
much
onboarding
solid,
and
right?
make that person available and we
But
also
there's sound
to us. But the cabin driver, I'll do
sound with,
a video call
modifying
that
the
people will do onboarding via video call. There is nothing in the compensation plan.
for them to provide
For that, I will have the stock survey so that I can
surveys or matching
compensate them by stocks also.
crimes that they have
So
done
I
before
want infrastructure for that.
and put in their study.
Then any kind of retention plan. So basically for all the drivers, I do buy the payments or reimbursement. But for every driver, I do the salary plan with the bank. We get it. And then any driver network capture. So I think that I will try to capture social media and to each if I can onboard. Prakash and most people like that coding to the so these are the kinds of stuff you could put out there. So we should come out with a study. What are we going to do in the next year? And then what are the dependencies? I think we're sort of more breaking down some of the now we can if we want to move on. I think
Sure that, I didn't say that, but that's fine.
I think that's what I was thinking. So if that is more to the big platform, not the way you have 100, 5,000, as opposed to maybe 10,000. Wait, what do you need to do? Oh, within that, what are the thing with I mean, okay, here's the features that I'm trying to right. Like, what's the meaning on the exact? Why do we I don't know. Yeah. Now we need now let's look at the number of e-commerce pricing, so I think it makes every part of really viable. Yeah. That's how I
would add colors.
I can say words. Right, in order to do that.
Although checkpoints here are not linked to one stage for one.
I think, yeah, but
We'll do it background check. Yes, the person is doing background check. Okay. So China is going to solve. Then we have doing the outcomes, so we have background scoring, right? Yeah, and background check come up with.
So you could basically use the test.
And then the last one is onboarding.
Right, and you can check those both the driver application and user ID.
Yeah.
Can you, are you able to
Deliver them in special. And
what that would be a check? It's pretty simple. I mean, let's start off with one way.
Okay, let me ask a question. Again, from our side, you can stay as long as late as you like, but I want to be honor the request to get out as early as possible and 4 p.m. if possible. It is 4 p.m.
Mark your hotel.
So we'll take him to dinner. We'll take Mark to dinner, but for those of you who are not coming to dinner, who need to go home earlier, you need about just 5 minutes of your time to complete just a quick retrospective. What worked well, what things would you like to see change, improve, other ideas that is important to capture for future sessions for these type of opportunities. So we want to spend 5 minutes there. The next question is, if you want to get out as close to 4 as possible, how many more minutes would you like to spend talking about both the exercise or other questions related to state or Agile in general?
We're going to exercise. Maybe we could kind of like have some time, kind of talk about our experience doing the exercise.
Yes.
Because I don't think we have really enough time to
Sure.
flesh out the thing, things like coaching it, how do we feel, what's the information we need,
Sure.
that type of thing.
That's fine.
More of a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Like,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's great. Just understand what it takes. That's great.
yeah, instead of, because we tried it, and we kind of like, well, this is a little longer than what we have.
There is not enough time to do that.
Exactly, and we're not really understanding why. We did have a good discussion.
Absolutely.
I think we need to do the presentation.
Agree 100%. How many minutes would you like to take to finish this process that you're going through? Questions, just ideas, sharing, whatever. 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. I want to make sure that we.
I think it's important because I think this is really execution of the
Yes,
day.
yes.
So I like to really hear others people thought about, are we ready to do this? What do we do? What are some of the considerations? I mean, I like to.
So would you look both 30 minutes or 5 minutes?
Well, no, I think about it.
1 minute. Okay. Others in your team? 20?
5, 10 minutes.
Okay.
3 hours is fine as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a flexible month, so they'll take them there.
Fine with me.
Okay. All right. So our team on the right. How many more minutes would you like to do? 10?
Yeah.
5 to 10.
Okay. All right. So that means we're going to shoot for 4:15 to be done.
Yeah.
And we'll take about maybe 8 to 10 minutes to finish this. And who wants to go first? Sounds like you're ready to go. So.
Me? Okay. Well, I mean, I think there's still, I think we spend a lot of time figuring out what are we planning to do. Because when you're doing sprints, they have space. You know what's out there. So we had to spend time to agree to, do a project. Figure out.
Yeah, so we didn't do any of the kickoff.
Exactly. So like, should we do that? Should we not do that? And then the other thing, the roles, I don't think everyone's really clear how do we play that in the exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. So there were some of those in the roles, but then we did as a team go through all the points as we go on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to echo that, I think it was a very ambitious exercise.
Yeah.
And so we did spend more time discussing the mechanics of the exercise than executing it. And I think I agree with the point about the role, which is I think the idea was to come up with a set of stories and independent them. But to even begin to think about what the stories would be, we have to start to think about how to, well, we have to start doing those
First few
slides.
steps.
Yes.
So there's a lot that goes into getting ready for the Agile, right? Yeah. That's why usually when you announce it, at least if you read 3-4 weeks in advance, and usually it's good exercise to say, November 10th is when we're doing the session. All of a sudden, I've got to present a user experience platform, and I got to do the architecture, I got to do the feature list. Then it creates momentum and support for November 10th, we got to do that. And what you were trying to do is do all that in 2 minutes. Yeah. Pretty ambitious.
So related to that, related to that idea of 5 to 20, is there some concept of an allocation of time after that, where you would then be doing this for the next 5 weeks?
The last week of it.
You then feel like this.
There is an IP sprint, if you look at the picture, innovation and planning sprint is there, and that's meant for preparing for and doing the session.
Usually happens
That's,
with that.
yeah. So that's what stage is application. In my experience in platform, so many organizations, that wasn't sufficient. And one of the things that state is asking for is you actually lay down what you do for the next month. And nobody was ready to lay down for the next month. So the kind of thing, that's what we see in that hybrid that I talked about in one of the slides, which is page 56. So one of the things we did was people come up with 100% estimate of this current next sprint and the following sprint, or sometimes only for the next sprint, 80% for the next 2 sprints, and 50% for the next 3 sprints. And they continually keep on grooming. That's the backlog grooming exercise that goes on throughout. So what happens when you go to the next PI planning, because the grooming went on, you already have an idea what goes on for the next 5 sprints. So this release planning or PI planning exercise is only more solidifying what you had already periodically groomed your backlog. So the backlog grooming is not a one-time exercise at the PI planning side. It's a continuous exercise. And that's the kind of thing that will come up when you start doing more of these PI planning exercises. And we didn't touch upon any of those things, so we apologize. But I mean,
that's the 4-day course.
That's just a one-day version of things, right? But when we do it for multiple days, we can go through all of that and expose all those issues and how you can do a fantastic job in planning out. So one of the things in Agile is that it's not that there is no planning, it's not that there is no estimation. Everything is there, except that it's like going to a battle. It's not that people don't plan when they go into the battlefield. But as soon as you are in the battlefield, all your planning goes haywire if the ground reality is something different. This is the same thing in your project execution environment. As soon as you hit something that is different from reality, you have to replan very quickly. So Agile is not about no planning. Agile is about how you can respond to change very quickly and replan very quickly. And the backlog grooming exercise really helps in continually planning on an ongoing basis. So that's
so there's a whole program backlog idea. There's a product manager that's involved with that. There's teams that so grooming is a continuous process almost. So what you're trying to do in a couple of minutes is actually a pretty extensive discussion of how do you do this effectively and accomplish the goals that I have. So since we have a little bit of time, thank you for those comments. Let me go to this team for your thoughts on what you accomplished in the 4 or 5 minutes that you have.
So we're the enabler. So the first chunk of the work would be the driver implementation side. There's the driver application review system, the process of it, how many API calls we can make for actual person to verify that. And then the driver can, we can verify the cars by VIN number and stuff like that to verify the car. And then on the onboarding chunk of the work, we will need unique employee ID that links with Workday, so we can onboard people with their compensation and payment, like bi-weekly kind of things. And then for elite driver networks, then we need to integrate with social media, and we need to have a scalable infrastructure for that. And on the qualification check, I just added one more on physical check, because if it's elite system, we want it to be able to help the passenger. So can the driver lift a wheelchair? Can they lift a luggages or something like that? Or certain kind of checks needs to be added to the questionnaires.
Excellent.
Just to add to that, we went through the different ideas. So the idea has been generated as of this, for instance. We should have had a plan executing the PI planning phase. So we needed to have, and that's one of the pain points of release engineers' job, that we need to make sure that everybody is is aligned with what we need to deliver that particular day, as opposed to having elaborative discussion.
That's right.
That's one of the major pain points.
Yeah, so syncing becomes a huge issue, right? Making sure that all the right teams are together at the right time, putting all of these things on a Kanban board, establishing dependencies, reprioritizing based on that. So this is a pretty extensive process. And in essence, the larger it becomes, if it's a huge team of 500 developers, the more challenging it becomes. So the release train engineer is a huge role. Getting everybody together at the right occasion, again, cadence to the process. Very critical. Any other thoughts? Final discussions? Yes.
So in this, do we review the requirements in this session, right?
Well, actually, what happens, each team has a set of, so there is a way to decompose the big problem into different teams, what each team is going to handle. Right. That's happening at the beginning itself.
Yeah,
and then each team goes away taking their version of what they think they need to do, and then come back with the next level of details.
So what level of details we go on the requirement side? Like, is it at the user level, use case level, or
the output,
like high level requirements? Like what level?
No. So the output of the team is at the user story level and the estimate on what it takes to implement. That's where I said there is a difficulty in estimating it for all the 5 sprints that you need to do right here in one day kind of thing. So typically what happens is you estimate 100% accuracy for one sprint and 80% for the next couple of sprints and 50% for the next sprint. That kind of thing, so that you can groom on an ongoing basis your estimate and the capabilities that you need to implement. But the goal here is essentially that you are estimating what it takes and slotting all the capabilities into those 2-week boundaries so that the dependencies are managed as well. But then another thing that happens is people will keep the current way of doing things, the way they organize the team, and there will be extreme amount of dependency. One of the important things that you need to remember is the goal is not to document all those complex dependencies. The goal is to reduce those dependencies as much as possible so that teams are more self-contained to deliver things, so that there are fewer dependencies across teams. And so you can deliver things faster and bring things together faster.
Yeah, because I'm asking that because there's a difference between user story and use case. From the packaged application standpoint, we refer to use cases more because it determines the persona and the system interaction. It captures that so that we can
identify further artifacts like the change management artifacts or the controls and everything from
So
that.
tell me about the change management artifacts that you're talking about.
So basically, I think when we describe the use case, right, there's a persona and the system. So if I can identify all the stakeholders from that, then I know how to manage the change management in parallel. So that is one of the outcomes of the use case description.
So the concept of change management and all of those things that are taking up so much effort for change management shows that there is emphasis on keeping it status quo and making change management as expensive as possible. The whole concept of Agile is making the change management as light as possible, as easy as possible. If we are driving towards making change management as a primary thing that is happening, that you need to plan for change management, then the concept of Agile is lost.
No, it is. What I'm saying is that it is a byproduct of preparing the use cases at a detailed level. Because if you want to understand all the stakeholders involved in that particular project or a program, if you start identifying or describing your use cases at a detailed level, right? If there is somebody who is missed out or not included in the overall stakeholder management plan, then all these things will start coming out as a byproduct.
If you have multiple stakeholders in a use case, then your use case is at a really high level. Because there has been very few stakeholders on a per use case basis if you really go down.
Can you finish that use case in 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's very important discussion. You can? Yeah, so you're now getting into a very actually lengthy discussions. Product owner, product managers, and the idea of backlog grooming is a huge concept by itself. How do you start with a feature set, and how do you decide it has to be epic, or it should be a story or multiple stories, and how do you decide how to translate your traditional use cases into user stories, and how do you define them? That's a whole topic in itself that requires some change of mind compared to how we've done things in the past, and then saying why it doesn't work, like the example that Prakash was giving. If you want to do it this way because of that reason, that invalidates this approach under Agile for this purpose. So those kind of discussions are important. First, we have to go through the Agile way and safe is X. Features are these, enablers are these, infrastructure and architecture runways are these. So define all of those things. Define how do you get to the right size user story. Define how you actually write those user stories. And then you can say, well, this doesn't quite match the use case that I have in mind, as an example. Or the package from ERP, from SAP wants it done this way, and it's how to define how does that map to a user story. Those kind of ideas. Long discussion. Great question. Probably won't be able to get it done today, but we should continue that discussion.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. When we were transforming many groups, there were large release management teams, and of them, there were some people that were from the PMO office, and their main job was to assess the change management in different projects. And they came at me and said, how are you going to do? What is your whole process for change management? They wanted a big document from me for how I do change management. I said, change should be as cheap as possible when you're embracing Agile. The concept from waterfall or any other thing is they have a plan, and change has to have so many stakeholders sign off on the document and make it as expensive as possible, as infrequent as possible. It's all turned upside down in Agile, right? So the whole thinking has to be completely different. Similarly, use case with having multiple stakeholders is probably not the use case at the level that we want it to be.
No, what I'm saying is like it is a repository of use cases for that sprint or something like that, right? So across the use cases, there might be many stakeholders, right? So you can actually identify many stakeholders from a body of use cases, not from like one use case.
Sure. So but you are dealing with it at the use case level or user story level. See.
So can I stop that? That's a great conversation.
Yeah.
I agree. We should. Again, it's a complex area. Yeah. Almost every group that goes through this kind of stuff. Yeah. But let me make sure that I get you to a point that you are comfortable. I learned what I wanted to learn and go home. couple of things. One is I want to spend just a few minutes on retrospective. What went well today? What could be improved? Just a few minutes. Then any 2 or 3 burning questions. You've got to have an answer today before you go home. If there is those burning questions, we can talk about them. We are here as late as you need us to. So if you want to stay and talk for the next hour, you can do that, or go to dinner with us, you can do that too. But I want to make sure those who want to go home at 4:15 can. So with that in mind, retrospective, just what went well, what worked. I can start with you.
I think some of the tools we got through were very useful.
Great, excellent. And what didn't go well, or would like to see changed?
I'd like a whole nother day on the second half of it.
Longer on things.
I feel we've got half the story.
Got it. All right. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so well, I just want to compliment both of you because I think you bring incredible energy and enthusiasm and passion, and that really shone into the related material. So that's a big thumbs up. I also feel that we had too much material. It was overly ambitious. I came into this with an awareness, but nothing more than an awareness of this thing called SAFe. I'm leaving with a little bit of an idea of what SAFe is and a lot of reading to do. Yes. And that's fine, but it's not entirely what I was thinking I was going to get out of it. Sure. So if I was to restructure this a bit differently, I would want to see SAFe first, like maybe an intro to SAFe.
Yeah.
And then going deep into some of the things we've got it.
So start with SAFe, then go to business model and other. Got it. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Maybe we should change the topic to say business transformation to scale agile transformation. We may want to just talk about scale agile transformation.
Just jump right into it. Your thoughts on what went well?
Well, actually, I like the order
Okay.
because it was more like the south of this is problem. And by the way, here's the tool, which is that. I like that as one of the things. Also, I didn't realize that I was using SAFe.
Okay.
Because, as the lowest in Cisco, I knew we were doing a hybrid of me, okay? But I didn't know some of them were SAFe. Some of these things are just basically business process engineering concepts, but it's more structured. So I was able to So what I got out of it was really kind of reconfirm that, yeah, it kind of like really understanding what's fun. But there's still a lot more to do, and I'm really happy that there's a framework that we can bring that and standardize it. What could be improved again, I think, is, I like the exercises are good, but I think the exercises are a little longer, so we could actually experience some of the mistakes that actually happened in some of the sessions, and have more like lessons of the experience of how we.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks to both of you for making this very interesting. I really like the real life examples and the wisdom all around. One thing what I want to focus is, as Mark said, like if you would have started on SAFe directly, then we would have gone much more detail into the actual execution aspects of it. Other than that, I think that we had the right size team to have everybody brainstorm and give their opinion. So I think size was perfect.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you.
I like the framework that you covered. So you actually covered quite a few without really, and how they all tie in together, which is great. So that was useful. I would have hoped that we would spend a little less time on the initial portion. I think the flow is actually good because you do need to know and understand. You're not just doing this for the sake of doing this. Like you need to actually know and understand that you're solving a business problem. You're actually solving something for a customer. That's why you're doing this. So a little less time on that and more time on the scale as a framework. Primarily because I think the exercises, like the last one that we just did, if we did that the right way, that would take at least an hour.
So let me ask you a question here. If we had the same exact agenda but over 2 days, would that have been a more adequate coverage of these topics?
Yeah, definitely too.
I have seen that before with these kinds of events where there have been topic has been too big for one Saturday, so then it's been one or two Saturdays.
Yeah, so that would definitely be good. especially because I think the first portion is important. The second portion is what I really wanted to get out of it because I've done the first portion already a lot of times. But the second portion, especially the PI planning, I want to know what others also what people are facing. Because we're already doing it. I'm already leading the Agile transformation. I know a lot of this stuff. It's just I want to hear what else.
Right, the experience.
And so, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Similar feedback, and also I really like the part that you guys are talking about lean and the example about the insurance one, because that gave me an idea how we can help on one of the line we're providing the product line about our insurance product, that how we can change the way that software can be. So I like that part too. And when you guys show the 2-day PI part, and I was like, I'm doing the same thing. I felt so good. And also when he said planning 5 sprints ahead, I was like, that's what I'm doing too. So I felt like I'm not doing something so wrong now. I'm not alone. So definitely looking more about safe and also lean. So thank you very much. And I would suggest maybe evaluate the audience and see how much Agile training they already have. That can save you half to 1 hour of time to,
Like how much emphasis you put on.
Because some of the concept we already have, you can skip that half of our belief.
Great, thank you very much. David.
Oh gosh, fair. Thank you both for making my job easier. Now I know I've done good by bringing you here, and thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. Second, I'm going to do my best to bring you both here, hopefully for 2 days next year. So keep my word on that, and I'll do my best to convince our executives that we need this workshop, a 2-day workshop. Now it's quite obvious that 1 day is not enough. The flow was, in my opinion, good. Now, most of us have some sort of Agile training. Well, I'm safe certified, so I'm here just to see, to learn from your experience, and that was important for me because I've implemented parts of it. I've been in different scenarios, having different capabilities on this. So I'd rather hear about the pain points so I can share, learn from your experience. As everybody said, the exercise, hands-on exercise, is going through the scenarios is important for everybody because that's our takeaway. That's what is important. So I'm thinking for 2019, when the gentlemen come here, share a lot of hands-on exercise on SAFE. And by then, I'm sure SAFE is going to provide us a lot of case studies and scenarios that we can share with everybody. Well done. Thank you for making my life easier.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. That you guys want to talk about? Again, we can stay as long as if it's something that nobody else could hear about, or let us know and we're here. Otherwise, thank you so much for being such great audience for our discussions today. I learned a lot from the interactions that we had about what's going on in your world, in your organization, what's working, what's not working. So I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully we're able to share with you some information that you can take back and use in real world scenarios that you're dealing with. So look forward to the next chance to get together again.
And Mark can stay until 7 o'clock.
That's right.
Thank you very much. And do you guys want to share each other's information together, and definitely share their information?